I had a right night last night.
Yeah.
There was a guy sat in front of me that was being a little bit racist, so I got into a bit of a confrontation with him, and he got kicked out. Probably going to be permanently banned. So that was
Oh my
interesting.
goodness.
Got to give a statement to the police next week.
Man, that's horrible.
That sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that was a Wrexham fan at that, huh?
Yeah, he shouted. Look, so Bradford, I don't know if I did listen to most of your pod with Mark. I can't remember whether he said, but there's a really high concentration of a Muslim population, mainly from
Mhm.
Pakistan. And when just after they scored, he shouted, "Oh, fuck off back to Pakistan!" It's like, oh, for God's sake,
God.
Jesus wept. And I confronted
Yeah,
him, and if he'd just like said, "Oh, not that it's an excuse, but if he'd have just said sorry, it would have just been like, you can't say that shit, mate," and left it. But he
yeah.
told me to fuck off when I told him he shouldn't be saying that. So it was like, right, I'm off to get a steward. I hate being a grass, but can't have that shit, can you, mate?
No, no, because it's like if don't say anything, silence is
Well,
complicity, right?
yeah, it's worse, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah. Yeah, because you're basically saying, yeah, that's okay to do. And then it's like those type of people, when you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. They're like,
Yeah, and
oh,
there's
oh,
and there's kids around as well. Who
yeah.
used to say their mates aren't Pakistani or I don't know, whatever.
I mean, even if they're not,
Well,
you
no,
know that,
exactly. But you know what I mean. It's even
yeah,
worse, isn't it? If there's people from different countries around,
yeah.
because there's a massive Polish and Portuguese population. Like, I'm sure they wouldn't be happy about hearing that kind of stuff, would they? It's just fucking wrong, mate.
And for all the kids around there, that's another generation that grows up thinking, oh yeah, this is acceptable. This is
Yeah,
normal. You could do this.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that's horrible, man. Well, good for you. Good for you for standing up and saying something because I don't know how it is over there, but there's enough people over here that don't say anything and just let it
It's
go.
what it's one of those, mate, in a busy football crowd when everyone's concentrating on the football. I think most people would agree with me. It's just that whether they actually heard it was him specifically. Yeah, lucky's the wrong word, but I just saw him get up and shout it because he's like directly diagonal from me. But other people around me heard it, but they didn't know where it had come from. So whatever,
What a
dickhead.
yeah, what a dickhead. Exactly. Love the background. What's that from?
That background is from the day that we stayed in the football league the year before we actually went down. So we nearly went down that season as well. We beat it was us and the other team of Boston. Not they hadn't flown over from the US. It's Boston in,
Yeah.
in the UK. Yeah, it was between us and them on who was going to go down. And they took the first goal, they took the lead, but we ended up winning 3-1. And that is one of the last games on the Cop as well.
Oh wow. Wow, wow, wow. And
So you
so I'm
can
looking for you. Where are you
I
at?
am in, I am in there somewhere, but it's too grainy. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying to get my bearings. I'm around here somewhere. I think actually I could be wrong, but I think that might be Che there, but I'm not 100%. The picture's
Really?
too small for me to tell from here. Yeah, but we
Oh,
are
that's cool.
like it might not. I'm not sure whether he had that shirt, but we were all like me and Mum Che, all them lot were like sort of around by there anyway.
That's cool. That's cool. The glory days. The glory days.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
or is right now the glory days? Like which one is
Oh, right
the
now it's definitely the glory
yeah.
days. I mean, that was a good day, but it was a shit season. So it's kind of like, and then I think because we went down the year after that, it kind of took the shine off
Mm,
the whole thing. Like, yeah, it was great that we stayed up, but we didn't make the most of it. We ended up getting relegated off the back of it. So yeah, it
yeah.
is what it is. Yeah.
You just said not asked or is it arsed or asked?
Asked, ARSED, but asked is, I
Okay.
suppose, is like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot who it was. Maybe Craig Jones or somebody put we bummed it, but I'm not asked. And I was like, wait. Is is
Yeah,
it
UK slang's weird because a lot of places won't say the same stuff as us as well. Like we in Wrexham, if you see your bum, it means you're not happy, or see your ass. Oh, I saw my ass over that. It's uh, you're not liking something, but not everywhere in the UK says that. I've said it to people and they've gone, "What does
okay,
that
okay.
mean?"
Yeah. Yeah. They're like, what Welsh language are you speaking over here? Tranmere.
Tranmere, yeah. Do
Tranmere.
you know? What do you know about Tranmere before I get started?
The illustrious, strong, long, lean, mean fighting machine. You know him as the Longanero of the Ninja Turtle squad, the fourth member of the Apocalypse. Bill Long. If I have time, I'll add in the round of applause.
Thank you.
Golf clap. Okay, so Bill, Tranmere, I don't know a bunch, but I was looking up Tranmere and I saw a few things on them. They consider us a rival. There's that.
There's that,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I guess we have played them the most in the football league. I think it's the sixth or seventh most times Tranmere has played teams were at least in the top 10 of the most matches against each other.
Mhm.
From their perspective, not from ours. Let's see. Oh, they have a hooligan firm called the TSB, the Tranmere Stand Boys, which could be a boy band. Just got it angry, and I'm not sure. I don't know, but all you hooligans out there, I think you're fine people. Don't come looking for me. There's no need for that.
It was burger throwing last week, and now
Yeah,
it's trying to avoid actual hooligans.
yeah. I think a lot. I've watched Wolf of Wall Street. There's a lot of decent firms out there, so they're doing their business.
Oh no! It took me a second. So I was thinking that's not the name of Green Street. It's like, oh right, no, I see where he's going with
Yeah. No, I
that.
was going in the most non. I don't want to I don't want to upset anybody. Let me just say
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah. I want to be safe. I want to be safe. This face doesn't need to be punched more than it already has. I'll just say that. So geographically, they're close to Everton and Liverpool.
Yes,
However, they're not really rivals because they haven't really played them much in
that's right.
football league history. That's not a dig at Tranmere, unless it is a dig at Tranmere. But haven't faced them much. Oh, there's a Welsh player for them, Reese Hughes.
There is. Do I know
Yeah.
much about Reese Hughes? I don't know. Oh, he's actually from Wrexham.
Okay. Well,
Ah.
I should have said that. So there's a Wrexham lad who plays for them, Reese Hughes.
So he's not someone I'm massively aware of. Just looking at his Wikipedia, he's only 21 and he came through the Everton Youth Academy and then signed for Tranmere and was actually last season on loan at, say it quietly, Chester. So
Mm.
he's not playing for us even though he's from Wrexham, and he's managing to accrue fixtures for two of our big rivals. So fair play to him.
Well, and to speak to that, they consider Wrexham, Chester, and also Southport as rivals.
Mhm.
So I think that has more to do with facing each other in lower league play,
Yeah, so
National League.
it's a bit of a weird one with Tranmere. They're like there's not many clubs in the country that are like this, but Stockport are actually kind of one as well, as where they're so close to their closest teams are big clubs. So like you've got obviously got Everton and Liverpool down the road from Tranmere, but Stockport have City and United not too far away. Walsall actually, another team that we played recently, their biggest rivals are kind of Shrewsbury, but there's still a bit of distance between them and Shrewsbury, but their closest clubs are the likes of Villa, West Brom, Birmingham, Wolves, who are all bigger than Walsall. So it's something that like a lot of satellite towns to bigger cities have that kind of weird sort of relationship with the big clubs, because Tranmere, a lot of people who go and watch Tranmere also support Everton or Liverpool.
Mm.
And I had a friend in university who was an Everton season ticket holder. His first year of watching football was at Tranmere because his dad wanted to take him to like a cheaper football to sort of see whether he enjoyed it or not before stumping up the money to get an Everton season ticket. So, I think it was in the 80s, maybe 90s, they used to play all their games on a Friday, and they were the only club in the country that did it because they didn't want to clash with whoever was playing out of Everton or Liverpool on the Saturday. So their crowds would be bigger because if Everton were playing away that Saturday, people would go on the Friday to watch Tranmere and then maybe go to watch Everton away, or whatever. They'd sort of figure it
Yeah.
out. And I'm sure there's thousands upon thousands of Tranmere fans who only support Tranmere. So don't get me wrong, but there is that little bit of a crossover between them and their relationship with the Liverpool clubs. Tranmere's, you said geographically, it's based in a city called Birkenhead. Well, it's kind of Prenton, but I don't really. The exact geography of where Tranmere's ground is a bit strange because it's in Birkenhead, but you can get off on loads of different train stops and like walk up to there. You don't have to get off at Birkenhead, which is like I want to say Birkenhead's a city. I think it's a city. Oh, it's a town, sorry, but it's quite a big town, similar sort of size to Wrexham, really. And you can, from Birkenhead, you can see Liverpool. They're across the water from each other. So there's like an estuary, the Merseyside, the Mersey estuary runs through Tranmere and through Birkenhead and Liverpool. So you can be on one side of the water and you can see the other town. So there's actually like boats. You still do them now. Where you can get like a ferry, it's like £3 you hop on it and it takes you to the other side, or you can go underground. But it's also not too far away from Wrexham, really. You'd probably say about 45 minutes on the train to get to Birkenhead.
Oh, wow.
So it's nothing at all, really. But I think because we've got Chester and Shrewsbury kind of closer to us, Tranmere are in a tier of clubs that, like, if you were like doing a tier list, like for games, like an S tier, A tier.
S tier.
S tier is Chester, A tier is Shrewsbury, and then there's like about 4 or 5 clubs in that B tier, like Tranmere, Crewe, Port Vale, Stockport to a lesser extent. All of that's probably more sporting these days rather than necessarily being because of distance. And it, like a lot of rivalries, because it's not our main rivalry, it kind of depends when you grew up watching football. So some people who've seen us play Tranmere a lot will probably dislike Tranmere more than someone who's a bit younger and has only had a couple of seasons of Wrexham and Tranmere being in the same division as each other. So they came down to the National League in 2015 and then went up 3 years later. So we had a couple of seasons against them in the National League, but historically most of our games have been in the Football League against them.
Okay. Yeah, so that's not a fairly recent rivalry. That's something that had lingered on pre-2015 or so.
Yeah. I think we've had big periods of not being in the same division as each other through history. They were in the Championship and got really close to getting promoted to the Premier League at one point in the 90s, or was it the 80s? My exact history of when Tranmere is successful isn't great. They also got to the Football League Cup final in the 90s as well. So they've had some really successful. It's 2000 League Cup final. So they've had some really successful seasons. They're a pretty big club, 16,000 seat stadium. I think in the absence of Chester or Shrewsbury in this division, it's probably the biggest game rivalry wise that we'll have this season.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's going to be pretty tasty, I think. Rana, it's one of those games where I don't think the hatred sort of runs really deep between either club, but we don't like each other either. Do you know what I mean? Like you're not going to wish Tranmere well, but you're also not going to want to throw a burger at them unless you're from Barrow. So,
okay, all right, Bill. Where officially we have to state this. How many burgers to the face would you give Tranmere?
We're going out of 5.
1 out of 5 burgers. Yeah.
3.5 burgers out of 5.
Okay, and these are single patty, double patty. What kind of burgers are we talking here?
The cheapest, because they don't deserve any better than that. That's a bit
frozen,
harsh, maybe. Yeah,
they're frozen patties, unseasoned.
Let me just state as well that I do not condone throwing burgers.
No,
burgers are firmly for eating, regardless of whether they're the cheap burgers or the expensive ones.
Yeah, the expensive ones like you would get at McDonald's. Something that for us high class people, maybe I don't know, go out on a limb. Maybe you go to a place that doesn't only sell burgers, but you order a burger there. It might be a frozen patty. That might go in Tranmere's face. I mean, it may not.
It might do.
Yeah, not for me though.
No,
not
enough.
Again, if there's a burger that's flying in the air, it's not coming from me. I will gladly receive said burger, but I will not be. There's no exit velocity of burger from these hands. I'll just say that. I also saw that relegated from League One in 2020 when they voted to end the season with COVID. They were, I guess, unfortunate to suffer the season ending early and then going on that average points basis. And
I want to say, but I could be wrong, that they just started to pick up a bit of form just before COVID. So they were one of the clubs that were a bit aggrieved that they got relegated on points per game because they could have probably saved themselves. I could be wrong. I could be mixing them up with another club, but if memory serves me right, I think they changed managers. They'd start to pick up a few points, but I mean, the season is the season, and if that's how it goes, it's unfortunate, really, isn't it?
Yeah, them's the breaks.
Yeah, yeah. Look, taking the rivalry aside, they're a good, solid football league club. They're probably big enough to be in League One fairly consistently. I mean, they have been in the Championship in the past, so there really is that like element of they're not out of place in this division, unlike some other clubs.
They have the pedigree for it.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and it'll be a feisty game without too much trouble. Touch wood. Although there's always an element of hooliganism. I think generally there's maybe not from everyone, but I think a lot of Tranmere fans have quite a bit of respect for Wrexham, and we have quite a bit of respect for them. It being a kind of arm's length sort of rivalry, should we say?
Okay, so it's good spirit to fuel the flames, but outside of the hooligans, it's just good banter to go back and forth.
I think that's pretty fair to say. There might be some people that completely disagree, but like I was saying earlier, I think that kind of depends on your experience with playing Tranmere rather than like watching us play Tranmere rather than it necessarily being a blanket. There will be kids that will grow up and potentially never see Wrexham play Chester. If we keep flying up the leagues and they never do any better, but they'll be brought up by their dads to hate Chester, dads and mums and grandparents and everyone to hate Chester. But I don't think that's the case with Tranmere, really, to be honest.
That was beautiful. That was beautiful, Bill. It's like this, not a backhanded compliment because there's no compliment in there at all, but it was like there are kids that might grow up to never, because it's implied that Chester will never make it up to where Wrexham is at. They had their chance. They're not going to be playing Wrexham.
Look, I could talk all day about how much I don't like Chester, but that's a teach me how to Wrexham. If we ever draw them in the cup, that's a teach me how to Wrexham, where I think you need to get as many people on a Zoom call as you possibly can, just to really explain it.
Yes.
So I mean, like in my memory of watching us play Tranmere, it's been kind of a mixed bag. We've had games where we did really poorly against them at home. I'm sure we lost. Paul Mullin was actually playing for Tranmere at the time.
Oh wow!
I'm not sure if he scored in that game. Can't remember, but he definitely played for Tranmere against Wrexham. And
that's funny because there was a comment that said I think it was on YouTube, said Paul used to play for us. He was nothing special.
Yeah, and he wasn't. I think he did fairly all right, but he was quite often played on the wing, and then he left them to, I want to say Swindon, but I can't remember exactly. Let me just double check. Didn't really have a great career there, and eventually made his way to Cambridge, where he just took off. No, sorry, he came from Swindon to Tranmere and then went on loan to Cambridge, and then they signed him full time. So this is kind of why it frustrates me when people write players off on their past history, because Paul Mullin for Swindon scored 6 goals in 40 games, and then he signs for Cambridge and scores 32 goals in 46 games. So and he's got 64 goals in 84 games for us. So you can't players are like any humans, and you can have late bloomers and people who will come into their own a bit later, or it might not be that they score goals, but they will just do a certain job for us that will facilitate winning. And there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, isn't there? That's especially with football, it doesn't always paint the full picture.
And that seems like just the classic thing where you can take any portion of history or any moment in history and paint the data how you want to paint it.
Yeah.
And so you could look at a 3-year-old and you're like, well, that person's not smart. Like when I knew them, they couldn't read. They're idiots. And you're like, well, hold on. They were 3. So yes, technically they couldn't read, but that's not who they are anymore. But you do get those people who will judge people based upon previous levels of growth and experience and don't consider the fact of the whole story. Everybody has their own journey. And like you said, there's late bloomers, there's early bloomers. And if you were to judge somebody based upon just one fraction and one moment of their life and not give the whole picture, then I think you're kind of robbing yourself to of like that perspective. It's like, oh yeah, he didn't do anything special for us. Does that mean he didn't score the goals that he scored now? Like, what do
Yeah,
you?
exactly. Yeah.
Those are there and they happen. And if you were, he's not going to be able to play against Tranmere right now, but later in the season, are those same people going to be not concerned? He's not that good. Like, probably not. They're going to probably want to make sure their defense is in order and that they're marking him and playing him appropriately.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, he's not that good. Okay, then let your defense lie down. We'll take that.
Yeah.
We'll take that all
And
day.
it's such a huge shame that he's not going to be available for that game because it's right up his street. He loves the big game atmosphere.
Mm,
He'd probably thrive off the Tranmere fans giving him a load of stick. And
yeah.
then on top of that, it's right down the road from him because he lives just outside of Liverpool, doesn't he? So it's a even shorter distance than usual. Not that it's it's not that it's particularly long to get from Wrexham to Liverpool, but I bet this will be the game that he'll be absolutely gutted the most to be
Oh,
missing because it's I'd love to see him get a hat trick against Tranmere. That would just be special.
well, and he's probably looking at that cup game and going, oh, I feel like if I could have been in there.
Oh, I
I
know.
could have been in there taking that first penalty. Also, all those opportunities that we've had inside the box and all those crosses. He's probably looking like, ooh.
Yeah, yeah. And, hopefully that'll be good because someone like Mullin, raring to go, he really wanted to get in the mix is dangerous for other teams, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for us. Good for
Yes,
us.
very,
Yeah.
very good for
Yeah.
us. Yeah. I can't wait till he's back. I love that man.
You heard about the nickname, the Super Whites?
Yes.
Okay,
I
so I just saw the nickname, assumed it's from them wearing very white kits.
I assume so myself. I'm not 100% certain. Yeah, they changed to a white kit in the 60s. They used to play in blue. So I think maybe it was just a case of them just calling themselves Super Whites. I don't know. They call
Okay,
themselves
fair enough.
Super White Army, and it's like, whatever. Go away, Tranmere.
Yeah, the Super White Army. I'm glad it went that direction because it could have gone another direction, like where the
Right,
Super
yeah.
Whites. Oh,
I think I think maybe the racial connotations of something like that are probably a bit more considered in America than they are over
yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah. Oh, trust me, nobody over here. Well, I'm not saying nobody, but only a select type of person would refer to themselves as the Super Whites.
And if you're listening, please don't subscribe. Jog on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll only diverge for a second, but I was listening to had a Twitter space and Liam from Lower League. I don't know if it's a podcast or website or what it is,
Mm.
but he was referring to, and everybody, I guess, that hasn't already heard that wants to go stalk his Twitter page or something like that. He referred to Ollie Palmer as like either the Hitler of football or something like that. So something. So,
That's a bit extreme.
it was, and to be fair, I didn't understand the correlation completely. I guess he just doesn't like Ollie Palmer and thinks that he's an arrogant. I don't know. Do you guys say this? Do you guys say a douche?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I don't
okay,
think
okay.
it's like in our vernacular, but I know what it means.
Yeah, I know you guys would primarily say the C word for somebody, which, well, wait, which is Chester. So
Course, yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Stop swearing, Ran. Stop swearing.
I'm sorry.
You've been warned.
I know I will take my lashings when this is over. but yeah, I didn't really understand that either. So I mean, for that divergent, let's get back to Tranmere and good old fashioned football, not none of this shocking clips just to get clicks and stuff like that. However, if there's a picture of Mussolini inside the thumbnail, that's not my fault. I'm wait, we'll see. If we ever play Chester again, you have a line of the top 10 dictators of all time and then Chester.
There's the problem with dictators is that as much as they're evil people, they do have a level of efficiency to be able to get to that level, and I don't think
Yeah.
Chester even have any efficiency. So
Ooh.
I don't think it's fair to put them in the same category, really.
Yeah. You're not even going to compliment them the other way.
They get no credit from me,
Yeah.
good or bad credit.
I would consider you a rival, but then that means I would have to consider you.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Chester.
Well, like Tranmere are probably going to be one of a few clubs that might fill that Chester gap now. It might
Yeah.
become more fierce because we haven't really got anyone local to play at the moment. So I'm saying all this about the respect and blah blah blah. It could end up being, if we end up being in the same division for a while, it could end up getting really heated. There's
Yeah.
definitely that possibility. I mean, it's interesting to me to see our new international fans talk about Stockport and Notts County.
Mhm.
And those were great. Those have been great sporting rivalries, but when they get mentioned in the bracket of rivals, I don't blame anyone who's just started watching. I'm sure if I was started watching the Lakers and I'm like, oh, their biggest rivals are whoever, and I wouldn't have a clue because it would just be going off the fact that they could be playing someone every.
Mhm.
So I don't. My basketball knowledge is, we've already established in a previous podcast, my basketball knowledge isn't there, but.
Well, it used to be the Celtics, right? Like
Right,
that was
yeah, of course, yeah.
big rivalry, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson
Yeah.
era. But yeah, it'd probably just be, whoever you want to hate the most, Golden State Warriors or
Yeah, I suppose basketball's not the best example really, but with Notts County and Stockport, it's just it's a footballing rivalry. I do not consider either of those teams like an
true
actual.
rivals.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not like the Springfield Shelbyville thing.
Yeah.
Chester are definitely Shelbyville, by the way. Just
Yeah.
putting that out there, but
Yeah. And of course, this is brought to you by
Duff,
Duff
sweet
Beer.
Duff.
Yeah,
Duff man is definitely a Wrexham fan.
oh, of course. I mean, 100%. Wrexham is the Springfield of the UK. We know this. This is fact. Um, would people consider them rivals not because they truly believe they were rivals, but just because it's a little bit of fun to have somebody like as a rival that you can shout at during a match, and when the game starts and the whistle blows, it's like, oh, we're gonna shout at them and give them all we got. When it's over, they're like, oh yeah, it was a good game. How you doing? Is that happen over there?
With which teams? Sorry, I think like maybe
Tranmere and Wrexham.
I think on the day of the game you wouldn't get much love between the two teams, but maybe on a if you worked with a Tranmere fan, you're not going to hold it against them. Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
I do actually work with a Tranmere fan, and he always asks how Wrexham are getting on, and and he takes a bit of an interest. Whereas I don't think, I mean, if they're your friend and you work with them and they're a Chester fan, then whatever. But I don't think it'd be quite as the football inside would be quite as cordial as that.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's definitely been trouble in the past, and I wouldn't be, unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised if there's trouble this year as well. Just because there's no other teams to take it out on, and we've got a bit of a target on our head now, Ran. I don't know if you've noticed on social media, but we're not exactly the most well-liked club in the world at the moment, are we? So that kind of adds a bit of
probably
spice.
The most hated in the league. Like who else?
It's probably not
would
far
be more
off.
hated than Wrexham this year.
MK Dons, but that's because I think they're permanently hated.
Yeah.
Whereas,
what's a good nickname for MK Dongs? Dons.
Hey.
Cut that. I'm off the rails. What's going on over here? But yeah, I mean, they definitely have a target on their back because they've come in swinging, and I think they beat Tranmere as well. They played Tranmere.
Did they? Oh, I have got their results up, so it's a good shout that.
But I think it was just 1-0.
Yeah, it was. You're right. They've also, so their results have been a bit mixed, a bit like ours really. They drew with, that must have been a friendly. Lost to Barrow, beat Barnsley in the cup, lost to MK Dons, beat Harrogate, lost to Salford, lost to Notts County, and then lost to Leicester last night in the cup. Although Leicester are in the Championship, to be fair, so that's kind of to be expected. So they're kind of there for the taking, I think. Really, they're not having a good start, but it's a typical. Every fan of every club in the land will say, "Oh, it'd be typical they beat us because they're doing so bad. They're bound to beat us. It will be the first win." Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So that could happen, but I think you got to take a game like that and absolutely just really go for them. To be honest, Ran, that's something that got to put them to the sword, so to speak.
Yeah. Do you guys say go for the throat?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Definitely got to go for the throat. just looking at their squad, there's quite a few players here actually that have got Wrexham connections one way or another. So the most obvious one is Connor Jennings, who played for Wrexham, and his brother played for Wrexham actually as well. James Jennings. He played about 80 games, so over about 2 seasons, scored 20 goals. He was quite well liked. He was one of those strikers that didn't score really regularly, but would set a lot of the play up, sometimes sort of drift out onto the wing. He also played for Stockport until very recently, played for Stockport the year they went up. And he did, whilst he was playing for Stockport, actually had cancer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think it was a rare form of bone cancer, which I'm not even going to try and pronounce because I'm not going to be able to pronounce that correctly. But he after 8 months of his diagnosis, he came back and scored for a winning goal for Stockport. So, fair play to him. He's gone through a lot, and the Wrexham actually set up a T-shirt with Connor Jennings on that went to some sort of charity. I think they found the proceeds for it, like something like "We're with you, Connor" or something, and it had a picture of him scoring for Wrexham on the shirt. And when we played Stockport and he came back, he did get a good reception, a big round of applause from the Wrexham fans. And I'd imagine even playing for Tranmere, he'd get a good reception. Although when he did leave from Wrexham and went to Tranmere, he's come back since, but he left Wrexham, went to Tranmere, and I don't think he got quite as warm a reception the first time he played against us in a white shirt. But, some things are more important than football, aren't they? And coming back from cancer is a big one. So hopefully you'll have a good season for Tranmere, just not good enough on Saturday. Don't want that. Looking at other names, there's a player called Kieran Morris who came on loan to us. He only played 9 games, scored 2 goals, one of them against Chester. So again, he's always in my good books just for that.
Yeah.
He's been playing for Tranmere for a long time now. He's a pretty decent winger. And then the other one is Brad Walker, who played for Wrexham on loan for 8 games. Sorry, over 2 periods, played on loan twice for Wrexham. And he's like that signing. He's a centre defensive midfielder, a little bit like what Tom O'Connor does, really, but a bit more of a sort of bruiser. Like flying into tackles and stuff like that. He could play centre back as well. And for a long period, every time he became free from whichever club, like he hadn't signed a contract extension or whatever. So I was like, oh, get Brad Walker, and he's the type of player we need. We need a Brad Walker. Let's sign him. I don't think he had like a particularly amazing period at Wrexham. I think it's just because he was such a specific type of footballer. Like his style of play was so like that sort of big bruising centre midfielder.
Vinnie Jones type of.
Maybe a bit more, a bit less ugly than Vinnie Jones in the way he played. Like no testicle grabbing, I don't think. Yeah, so he's often been linked back with us, but never, hasn't come back since 2019 when he was on loan. Good player. I don't know how much game time he's getting at Tranmere. He'll definitely be one to watch out for. Other than that, really, there's not anyone that I can see off the top of my head who've played for Wrexham, but who cares? If we beat them, doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned. Let's just go and give them a pasting.
Yeah. No matter what you say, ultimately, we want the win.
Oh,
so yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, he's a good guy and everything. And I don't know if this is something that's prevalent over in the UK or in football in Europe at all, but over here you have a good number of players who, like, when that whistle blows or between the white lines, you get one guy, and then when it's over, you might have somebody who's friendly and nice to you, but during that time, you have a gamer, a baller who's just going for heads and going ruthless. And kind of Ted Lasso showed a little bit of that with Danny Rojas. And where when he played him, he
Mexico
was like,
played Canada.
Yeah, you are the enemy. And exactly. And then, but okay, the game's over and it's everything. Oh, hey, how are you doing? Oh, you're doing good. And it's like, whoa, what the hell happened? But that's kind of common out here. Not every player does it, but it's not unheard of at all. Is that a thing out there?
That's definitely a thing. I can't think of any players off the top of my head, but there's a fair few of them sort of people that are like, described as nasty piece of works on the pitch, but like the nicest guy ever off the pitch. It's definitely a thing.
Turn it off.
Yeah. And in my very, very limited football career, would like to say that I would be that sort of person if I ever played.
Yeah.
Business on the pitch.
I was that type, except I wasn't as nasty with intentionally hurting people. I just played hard and accidentally hurt people. And then, but outside of matches, I was like, oh, like, I'm sorry I did this, either when in practice or during games. I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. But like when you're going for the ball, it's like all you see is the ball, and who's ever in the way just happens to be in the way. And then
Yeah.
and then you come down and then you're like, yeah, oh, I would have never drop kicked somebody in real life. But so how about, you were talking about some of the players in the past for Tranmere that like played against us, and mentioned there are some stories from the past or history of like some troubles going on. Can you reference anything that particular that happened that would stand out?
I've got one story that I wasn't there, but Che and my mum experienced. We lost to Tranmere, I want to say 5-0 or 5-1 at home. And in goal was a player called Javi Valero. Now, he's gone on to have a really, really like decent career as a goalkeeping coach, but as a player, he was absolutely useless. I think it was like, if it wasn't his first game, it was like his first home game, and apparently the ball trickled under his legs. Like he's gone to sort of catch it, stooping
And
down,
then just went under.
it's just gone under him. Yeah. And Wrexham got absolutely battered that day. But the only moral victory the Wrexham fans had were a tannoy announcement that said, we are sorry to announce that refreshments have been sold out in the away end, and everyone cheered because it was the only thing that they had to cheer all day.
You just
And
need one win.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't really get sung anymore, but back in the day, if there was a player that had a bit of timber on them, like a little bit of like fat, because I mean, they're pro athletes now, aren't they? They don't have that anymore. But in the 80s and 90s, you get someone who was really good, but just like a pint and a cigarette, and you know what I mean? Like they just happened to be that good that they could play up to a certain level. The fans would chant, "Who ate all the pies?" at them. So, who ate all the pies? Who ate all the pies? And instead of singing that, the Wrexham fans sung, "You ain't got no pies, you ain't got no pies," and so on.
Yeah. That's it. I don't know if you remember the boxer Mayorga. He'd always have like a belly. He'd be smoking pre-match, it just chain smoking, but then he'd go in and win. And it's like,
Yeah.
From that era, which was, I don't know, early 2000s, or he could get away with that. But you would imagine now you can't get away with like the
Oh no, not
level
at
of
all.
athletes right now are just so fine-tuned, where there's so much data science behind it, where if you do this, if you eat that, Tom Brady's famous for having a specific diet, like an anti-aging diet, that
Oh really?
he has a dietitian that is like, here's what you eat when you eat it, and this is what helps you recover the quickest, helps fight off like the aging process as an older professional player. There's just so much into the game now, and in game I say universally throughout all professional sports, that now they're just tweaking those small things that give you like a half percentage advantage if you do this. But those things make a difference when you compound them with everything else. So
yes,
those
and
days
especially
of
if especially if you got a whole team that buy into an ethos of making sure they're strict with their diet and exercise and everything. You definitely see it. I mean, I think that's why we won so many games in quite late on in the game last season, because our fitness regime and our probably the diet and and let's be fair, the money and the sports science that was going into Wrexham compared to, let's say, I don't know, Wealdstone, or I don't know why I'm picking Wealdstone. I quite like Wealdstone as a club. I just saw us score 2 goals in the last 10 minutes against them 2 seasons ago, and it's because of that, having that superior fitness level. It's crazy how much sports changed, isn't it? Rugby's a really good example, and I'm sure American football's like this now as well. Like the best players in rugby in the 70s would just not be able to compete anymore, because the sheer size and physicality of the players now is absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, football is a bit more of a skill-based game, so I think over a short period, if you took, say, the best team from the 70s to play a team now, maybe over 20-30 minutes they might be able to compete, but then after that the diet of Guinness and steak is going to catch up with them.
Which is not a bad thing for anybody out there. That's an incredible meal. You should have that every
meal.
Yeah. Guinness and steak, or steak Guinness. I don't know, marinated in some Guinness, and
why not?
Yeah.
Oh, you're making me hungry now, Ran.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize, but but I will do a Uber Eats. I don't know if you guys do Uber Eats over there, DoorDash. Okay. Yeah.
We don't have DoorDash, we've got a Deliveroo's hours, but we've got
Oh,
Uber Eats.
Deliveroo. I forgot
Yeah.
when I was out there. Not that I'm lazy or anything, couldn't go to anything, but sometimes it's a little bit late at the hotel and you wanted something. And so
Yeah.
yeah, I did use Deliveroo. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah. So that was a good story with Che and your mom had to or got to experience.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is there any other like historical ones that people remember from, I don't know, years past?
Years past, I struggle really to come up with one. I will have to do a little bit of digging on this, so don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure. Are you aware of the Gresford mining disaster?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So for anybody who isn't, it was a disaster in the 30s where a mine shaft collapsed in Gresford, which is a village just outside Wrexham. 266. Oh, I gotta check that because I don't want to get that wrong. I
Two
think it was 200.
260 something makes sounds
Yeah,
familiar.
so it was in 1934, and it was 266 men died from the underground fire explosion and collapse. It was a lot of the men that were working that night actually switched their shifts with people who didn't like football because they were going to go to the Wrexham Tranmere
Mm.
game that was the next day.
Oh, was that the Tranmere game?
I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm pretty sure it was Tranmere. Yeah. So those poor souls lost their lives because they were going to go to that game, and that's why the club, even though other than the fact that obviously it was a disaster that happened in a village just outside Wrexham, so obviously it's going to be linked with a club to some degree, but it's got that even more of a link because so many of those people died because they were working a different shift. So yeah, maybe not the best example of a historic game, but there is that link there where Tranmere
Yeah.
are connected to the disaster. Yeah, it's just even the thought of it, it's there's still people today who have relatives that have passed away in that disaster, and it's made such an impact on the town. But it's kind of like it's weirdly sort of forgotten in. It doesn't really get a lot of mention in British history. There are other disasters in Wales that look, any disaster is a disaster, so I'm not going to try and downplay that at all. That where less people died and it gets that little bit more recognition just because of the location. And I think there's always been that sort of north-south divide in the UK, but even North and South Wales is pretty divided. When we get onto the Newport episode, that'll be a good
Mm.
conversation. But also nationally, the whole north of the UK kind of gets ignored compared to the south. So, 266 people is. I mean, I'm kind of downplaying it really. I don't want to feel like I'm not doing it any justice, but yeah. So two clubs that have got like a deep history with each other. Like you say, we've played each other a lot, and it's we're almost two sides of the same coin, really. They're a very similar club to us in a lot of ways, and I think they're always the best rivalries in a way when there is that familiarity, when
Mm.
you're looking at a team that they kind of are what you are as well, and it kind of makes it feisty because you want to be the best version of that type of club. If there's a reason that Tranmere aren't rivals with Everton and Liverpool, and that's because they're not really like each other. You got Everton and Liverpool, are two massively, massively successful clubs. If Tranmere beat Everton, amazing for them, but it's only going to happen once every half a century or something, every
Yeah.
quarter of a
Yeah.
century. But they could be the best out of us two for this year, and then possibly next year, and then the year after. Do you know what I mean? It just gives it
Right,
that
right.
little bit of like the familiarity gives it that bit of spice, really.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to circle back to Greece for just a second. And you said it was just outside of Wrexham. For us in the US, just outside of Wrexham is actually really close.
Yeah,
For a
right.
lot of
Yeah.
for our cities out here, where it's located from the disaster to Wrexham, and a lot of our cities and towns would still be considered part of the city and town, the way that we map out areas out here. So
Yeah.
it's not like what like a 30 miles or something. It's probably within
Like
what.
5 miles, I
Oh
think,
yeah, five.
roughly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I remember driving. Mark took me and Anna to go see where the actual markers are
Memorial.
at.
All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
well, there's a memorial, and then there's the actual two markers of the mining entrances that they voluntarily blew out, and they're marked with these tiny little cement bollards that have now deteriorated. They don't have any verbiage or signage on them anymore. And they're just in the middle of like the back of a industrial area, like somewhere that processes paper or laminates or something. And right where the employees would come out and take maybe a smoking break at tables, there's just this little cement thing, unmarked, unnamed. And that is and I'll throw the pictures on here. And that is the actual entrance of the collapse. And there's two of them within 50 yards of each other. And those are the two. And there's no markers to it. There's nothing that says this is the location to it. And if I'm correct in assuming, I think what it was is the mining company that owned the Greasford mines, but they were well connected within the local like government and happenings, and they kept a tamp on any press getting out. So you didn't hear about it even nationally or other places because the word was not able to be disseminated. So like a tragedy on top of a tragedy of it not being able to be also shared. And then the families not being able to properly get to grieve and mourn their family because there's a set of denial about the experience that was going on in a cover-up of sorts. Now, I don't know if I'm too far into the conspiracy end, but I think that's supported by historical references. And
I think it's pretty well documented that they tried to keep a lid on it, and it's probably why it's never really had a lot of coverage even now, because people weren't made aware of it at the time, and it's not stayed in the memories of the nation really. You know, it's kind of just been kept quiet. And the 30s is a weird time. You know, there's national papers, there's radio coverage, but there's not a lot of ways to get that message out. Do you know what I mean? It's not like social media or even just the 90s when TV was around. But I think maybe it'd be worth at some point, Rand, getting somebody who's a bit more qualified than me to speak about it, because I don't, you know, it's not something I'm really well versed in. But the game around the 22nd of September is usually used as a memorial game. So let me just have a quick look.
Okay.
Not always, but there'll usually be a minute's silence. Actually, next year will be the 90th anniversary of it. So that's, you know, that'll be something that there's a lot of chatter about then. It's a bit of a weird one, because we're playing Stockport away on the 23rd. So it could either be the Grimsby game the week before or the Crewe game the week after that's kind of used as a memorial. But I would be surprised if it was the Crewe game, because that's another game, a bit like this Tranmere game, where there'll be that edge of rivalry. And we haven't actually played Crewe in a very long time. So I think that could be one that's a bit nastier than this one, really. So
the environment might not call for it. Yeah.
Well, actually, it's a good way to bash Chester again a little bit, really. In all fairness, right, when there was 2015, was it 2014? It was the 2014-15 season. We played Chester in the league, and fair play to Chester as a club, they held a minute's silence, because Gresford is actually pretty much like the halfway point between Wrexham and Chester, and there would still be that connection for them as a city. Not quite as deep as ours, but there may have been people that worked in the mine that would have been Chester fans or whatever. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. But there is that sort of link. But a small group of their fans decided to interrupt the minute's silence. There's a very famous bootlegger clip where he's saying, "That's disgusting," and it's kind of used as a meme, but that's actually bootlegger reacting to the Chester fans interrupting the minute silence. So.
Yeah, that's good context, because I've seen that clip, and you know he's talking during the minute of silence, and now it makes so much more sense why he is, because I was like, wait, well, if they're disturbing it and then you're saying stuff during the minute of silence, but that makes more sense that he's defending what was going on.
And I can't be too critical of Chester, because it was a reaction to Wrexham fans the year previous holding up a really disgusting banner about two of their fans that had committed suicide. And that's the really nasty side of football, that there's just a small minority of people that are absolute knuckleheads that kind of ruin it for everyone else. So their fans kind of did it as a retaliation. They sung about a young Wrexham fan that had passed away while they were interrupting the minute's silence. And it's ugly and it's disgusting from both sides. So, I'm not going to be too critical of your average Chester fan for that, but that's why you don't do a minute's silence during a rivalry game, unfortunately, because those few idiots ruin what could be a moment of solidarity, together over something that's more important than football. But
yeah.
This is starting to take a bit of a somber tone, this rant.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I guess to kind of close that out for the new fans that are out here and maybe followed last season or the last couple of seasons, if you remember that jersey on the backside has 1934, which isn't on this season's jersey. I don't know how everybody feels about that, if that's something that it needed to stay on the kit or not, but it is.
I'm kind of torn, really. It's not something that we've always recognised on our shirt. So I think it's not like when Liverpool FC took so their badge used to be a little bit more like this, didn't it? It was like had like a lot of decoration around it, and now they've gone back to just using the liver bird, which is just like similar sort of to our dragon, but
more simplest.
The reason it had all of that was because it was the gate in Anfield that commemorates the Hillsborough disaster.
Oh yeah.
So when they took that off, it was a bit more controversial because they'd had that badge pretty much since the moment the disaster had happened. Whereas we've only ever every now and again had a memorial on our shirt, so it's not as big of it's not as controversial just because it was a very nice touch, and personally I probably would have kept it on, but it's also not like it's a tradition that's gone on since the Gresford disaster, so it's kind of one of those. What I'd like to see, Bran, this is kind of a controversial point amongst Wrexham fans, so for those who don't know, that is the Prince of Wales feathers. It says in German, Ich dien, which means I serve. Now, I won't get too political, but I'm not a humongous fan of the Royals, and I certainly don't like wearing I serve on the shirt. So what I would like, personally, I know it's not for everyone, but get rid of the feathers and put the Gresford wheel there some way.
Yeah,
that's the only change I would like to see made to the badge: a white Gresford Memorial wheel there instead of the feathers. That's how I do it personally, but I know not everyone agrees with that. So
hey, you got to pay respect, because maybe the people that wanted to keep it tamped down and not talked about, maybe they were successful, because you get 1934 on there and not too many people are disturbed when it goes away. Maybe that worked. What they said of keeping it out of the public eye and everything, and not making it a memorial and etc. Maybe because it wasn't even celebrated until the 60s or something, as far as an acknowledgement of the actual disaster. I don't remember the specific date, but it was a while since it had occurred.
And I remember, I can't remember exactly when, and there will be people who can correct me on this, so please feel free in the comments, but we didn't always commemorate it at the games. I remember it might have been this season or the season before was like the first time the club actually started making a big deal out of it, and actually having a fixture as the memorial game with a minute's silence at the start. Didn't always happen. So, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with the club not doing that, but it's just one of those that maybe, you're right, we just need to, as a town and as a club, need to commemorate it a bit more.
Yeah, it wasn't always acknowledged, and conspiracy theory in me says, well, then maybe somebody from the family died that had some bit of sway over the club, and they're not around anymore, and now you're able to talk about it.
Maybe it's not like I say.
I know no information, so
don't I just wasn't sure whether Mark had told you something, because Mark knows everything about everyone, doesn't he? So
well, and Emma studied the disaster as her thesis.
Of course, so he definitely will have heard a lot from Emma, because I think they kind of do that in their spare time, them too, don't they? Just have studious conversations about the world.
Yeah. If you ever want to be a fly on the wall anywhere around Mark and Emma, well, speaking of crests and the way that our crest and badge is, Tranmere has a really intricate crest.
Yeah, and that's fairly new, I think. It might be that it's they've brought an old badge back, but that's not the badge they used to have when I was growing up. It was very similar, but more simplistic. The version I'm sort of like fairly aware of, that was mainly just white and blue. But yeah, their new design is really, and that kind of goes against what football clubs tend to be doing, isn't it? Because old school football logos, badges, even they were always quite like the Tranmere badge, and quite intricate, a lot of stuff going on, because it would just be embroidered on. But coming into the digital age, when things had to be turned into vector images, clubs just started going more simplistic because it was easier for branding and getting merchandise out there. You look at like the Chelsea badge, for example. It's really clean and simplistic, but I bet it's dead easy to minimize and maximize a vector image with that kind of badge. Luckily, I think ours just by sheer look kind of falls into that. It's not too, over the years it's had some slight tweaks, like the size of the feathers and the shape of the dragons have changed, but the core like design principles stayed the same. Whereas Tranmere seems to have gone the other way, and they've gone more intricate, really.
I don't even know what half of those things look like. I was trying to look at it and decipher what it is, and I'm like, what is even going on there? There's something that looks like somebody smushed a dove.
Yeah,
that bird looking thing, but
I honestly don't. Looking at it, you kind of like, you grow up familiar with all these badges and don't really ever think to like. It's quite interesting that you always, like, every time we do this, you bring the badge up, and it's just not something that you kind of just see it without actually really breaking it down. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially the bee and the arrow, that'll haunt me for life. That will.
Got him. Well, in this one, I'm like, okay, there's a lion, but then there's two more lions. That probably represents somebody or something. Why that's there?
I'll throw you the link I've just found of the badge from '62.
Right, let me take
their badge in 1962, which is the more like, it's obviously what they're trying to like recapture, that style of badge.
Oh, yeah,
returning to that
proper Holy Wars.
Yeah. So I still don't know what lions, that thing is.
There's lions on there. There's the tree. And then what are those? Are those moons? Because that's on the new one too.
Moons are like quite prevalent on British insignia, and I have absolutely no idea why, but they are on a few things like that.
And that blue thing that looks more like a six-pointed something on the new badge, it looks like a dove with
a squash dove,
wings.
Like a really bad attempt at drawing the Twitter logo.
Yeah. That's why they simplified it. It's just an X, okay? It's just a cross turned 45 degrees. That's all it is. Don't worry about it. But yeah, I don't know what. So obviously an oak tree, lions, which in England, that's typically families or something like that, is known as lions or something.
Just looking on Wikipedia, and it's the coat of arms of the borough of Birkenhead. That's what that badge is.
Okay.
So most towns and cities have a coat of arms. Wrexham used to, in the '60s, the old badge before this one was a part of the coat of arms of Wrexham, like a tweaked version of it. Yeah.
And that's common to just adjust whatever the coat of arms is.
It used to be, and then obviously as time's gone on, like, clubs have either kind of moved away from it, or they've taken bits of that coat of arms and simplified it, or just taken just taking the lion out and used that as their logo, or whatever, really. Yeah, and this new version it's dead similar to the '60s one, but it's got the football and a boat instead of the helmet. I'm assuming that's because it's Docktown, because Birkenhead and Liverpool are both, they're closely linked, because it's on the Mersey, the estuary, so that'll be where that connection comes from. The rest of it, not a clue.
Yeah. Well, and then hopefully if anybody from Tranmere watches this and they've made it this far and we haven't thoroughly pissed them off, could you please explain the badge? What is that thing that looks like a squash dove? If it's a commemoration to something that has happened in the past, I apologize for calling it a squish dove. If it is a squish dove, why is it squished? What's going on there? And then also, are there different badges maybe that are used on branding or t-shirts or something that is a more simplified version? Because we've seen so many things become simplified for vector images, even for the icons on smartphones, because you have that small little box and they need something that is simple identifiable, and it can't be that intricate for, like a little app logo or icon.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
wouldn't be surprised if that shield in the middle with the TRFC on it might be what they I don't know for definite, but that would strike to me as the thing that would be on more simplified bits of kit or merchandise or whatever. But that's just a guess. I mean, I don't make a habit of looking at Tranmere merchandise, to be honest, Ran, so I wouldn't
yeah.
know.
Well, and I don't know if other international fans or new fans find an interest into the badges and crests like I do, but you look at them and you go, well, that's probably some bit of history that I don't know. And there's probably a story that's inside most of those. And
Yeah.
so it's interesting to me. I don't know if it's interesting to everybody else. This might be the second that people down in the chat, go ahead and throw a smushed dove if you find this interesting. If you don't find it interesting, just don't put anything. You don't need to say anything rude or negative. I'm sensitive. I'm off the beer right now, so don't give me too much to think about.
I'm reading an article here. Well, I say reading, like skimming it while you're talking.
Yeah.
And even within that, like I can't find like an explanation. It's explaining why they've changed to the more modern one, but without really explaining it properly. Yeah, please, somebody, because I now feel like an absolute tool for not knowing what a squashed dove is.
I guarantee if we grabbed, 10 or whatever American teams logos from professional sports, we'd probably have most people going, yeah, I don't know why that's there. I mean, that was just there. Like it's always been there. Of course, that's what their logo is. So I don't think that's uncommon. I think that's pretty common for most sports fans. And not saying that sports fans are meatheads, but just you follow something, it's always been there and you don't question it.
Yeah.
And then if it changes, you're like, well, why are we changing this right now? We've always had this. So that's when questions normally come about, which, like for this, if you've always seen that as the badge crest when you've played them, that's just who they are. I don't need any other explanation. I want to know if we have a chance of winning. I want to know, who their strikers are, where their weaknesses are at. But yeah, I don't need to know all that other stuff. I'm just a weirdo who enjoys things like this. I will, when we get off, I'll go do my dig and deep dive and see if I can find out some more information, because I find it interesting completely.
You can log into your YouTube burner account then and comment back to yourself.
Bill, what do you know about my YouTube burner account, man? What's going on? Do you know the name? Because there's some stuff I don't want nobody to see going on in there. There's a lot of Taylor Swift getting played. But yeah, that stuff I find very, very interesting. I find it super interesting with Wrexham. By the way, before we started recording, we're talking about Bill's kit right there. Bill, what kit is that?
Yes, so this is the 2009-2010.
Wait, lift it up a little bit higher, because I'm sure a lot of people will recognize it once you see. Oh no,
look at that! I've green screened myself.
Jeez. You wonder if camouflage works.
The shirt that Rob McElhenney first posed in, the one that was red body with the white sleeves, the 2021 shirt was sort of based on, is also kind of similar to this, isn't it? It's got without the black on it, it's got the similar sort of collar and the white sleeves. We've had, I think they are, I could be wrong, but I think they are the only 3 Wrexham kits that have had white sleeves, all white sleeves on both sides. We have had one that was like had like a sort of half white, half red with a green sort of cut on it on one sleeve. But this is the only 3 I'm aware of that have almost like an Arsenal style, really, isn't it? It's not something that's associated with Wrexham. We tend to be in all red, or maybe a pinstripe at a push, but usually all red. We didn't do particularly well in that season. It wasn't a particularly popular kit either, because the away kit was Umbro went through a phase of using the same templates for loads of different clubs, and our away kit that year was white, blue, and red, and it looked like an England shirt, and everybody hated it. The design of the shirt was quite nice. It had like a band across it, that was blue and like a line underneath that was like red, like a red trim or something. And if that band had been black or green, people would have loved it because it was actually quite a sleek design. It was just just the colours were like, you don't put, unless you go in all blue, like last year's away kit, you don't put blue on a Wrexham shirt. It's not, that's not the dumb thing. And that was when we had some quite obviously dodgy owners who were mostly English and didn't really see, either intentionally saw the connection and thought, oh, we don't care if we piss the fans off, or was that bad of an owner that he was ignorant to the fact that it was like
either way
it's not great, is it?
Yeah.
No, the year after that, our away kit was like an all blue, but it wasn't that like nice powder sort of blue that we have that's on the away kit last year, which is like a connection to Wrexham lager cans always used to come in the same colour blue. So that's why we always wore that. That's why we have away kits in that colour. It was like it's almost like a Chelsea blue, Chelsea kit blue, Chester blue. It wasn't a blue that suits Wrexham. It was just kind of like, I don't know how you describe it, just blue. Not too dissimilar to this blue, really. It didn't look too bad. I think if it had been blue and white stripes, it definitely wouldn't have worked because that's Chester's colours. But it was still a bit like, I don't think it would have sold that much because it's just like there's just no connection. And it was all because one of the advisors to the club at the time was a Chelsea fan. So he wanted an away kit that looked like a Chelsea kit. It was like,
stop. Don't do it. What's wrong with you? I don't see that going over well at any point in time of basically wearing an England flag. What genius was like, this is going to be good. This one's going to fly off the shelves.
The thing is, it was Umbro made the England kits at the time, and it was really similar to one of the England kits. Their version was like an inverted one where it was the England away kit, which was red with the blue band and white on the trim, and it was just like an inverse. It didn't work. Che's got it somewhere. That would be really rare. Yeah, it might actually, it'd probably be quite hard to get a hold of that because no one would even want to keep it.
I would love to see the executive board meeting or the marketing meeting where they're coming up with the designs and somebody's like, well, okay, there's England, Wrexham, Wales. That's the opposite. Well, what would be the opposite of this style? Invert the colors. That's all you have to do. You just invert. That is the opposite. Of course it is.
Do you know what? I'm going to see if I can find it so you can
take a look.
Turn away. Okay. Yeah. Just to see how egregious it is. To be honest, Ran, that would actually imply that there was any thought process going into anything at the club at the time.
The full
and not just
yes,
and not just
assumed. Like okay, let me see this.
And not just like it's kind of hard to tell on that photo. It does look black on the photo, but I can categorically tell you that's blue.
That's a blue. Okay.
Yeah.
And
it's not great lighting on that photo, but it's definitely blue.
It looks black, but I could see that as blue. And that's not a bad design at all.
Yeah, it's all right, isn't it?
Yeah, they should have thrown green. That should have been green. That would have looked amazing because it complements everything there.
And now I'm just trying to see if I can find the England one. Yeah, and it is literally the same design in reverse.
Okay. Yeah. That's disappointing. Yeah.
And then the blue
is that Rooney right there? Yeah. I'll have to include these.
And then this one, I mean, you can cut this bit out audio wise, but this is the blue one I was talking about, just so you can see that.
Okay.
The blue that was yeah. It was actually a bit darker than I remember it, to be fair, but it's still pretty Chester looking.
That was a Wrexham kit?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. We can cut this, but get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. But again, it's not a bad shirt. It's a nice shirt. It's just not a Wrexham shirt, is it? That's just not a Wrexham shirt at all.
Why isn't there ever? Go ahead.
We're just going
to talk over each other. That's all we're going to do.
You go first. Go.
Okay. Well, why isn't there any? If there has been in the past, I just haven't seen them. Why isn't there any green Wrexham kits? Because it almost seems like that's the natural color design and palette that is involved.
There's been a fair few. The kit when they first took over was green, wasn't it? It was like sort of like the Philly.
Yeah.
Well, the Philly green,
Philly
wasn't it?
Green.
Yeah. There has been a few more traditionally green tops. This is one I quite like. It's a bit of an underrated kit for me, this one.
What are you searching to find these in
Just
the
Wrexham, then the year, then away kit. But if you just put
mm,
Wrexham away kit in, it'll come up. I think the green thing it is kind of because of color blindness.
yes,
So
yes,
in Italy, actually, in Serie A, they've banned green kits completely. So there's no
yeah,
clashes. The only teams that can wear green are teams who have always had green for their home kit or some green on it. Other than that, they're not allowed to use green at all. And I think, to be honest, for me, like I like a green kit. I really like a green kit, and I think they sell pretty well because we went through a period of having a lot of green kits purely because they sold well. But I'd rather people were able to enjoy the game and be able to see the which team's their team than have a green kit.
yeah,
There's plenty
and
of colours. We can have black, we can have white, we
yeah.
can have blue. It's or a certain shade of blue anyway.
Well, you have to specify. You have to specify when you
Yeah.
do that. Well, no, and that's good because so Wrexham has the autism outreach with the quiet zone. I believe that was the first in the UK that ever existed,
Mhm.
started at Wrexham, was a trendsetter. And that type of consideration for not only your fans and supporters, but for just people in general, it's only natural that you would do things that has a wider branch and wider appeal. Color blindness is a lot more common than people think, and it
Yeah,
exists.
it's 1 in 10 or something like that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
like
Maybe not quite that, but it's yeah. When we played Walsall the other week, a lot of people complaining about Walsall's green away kit because they couldn't see which team was us
yeah,
and which was them. And
yeah.
there is actually the Football League do have guidance, but in typical British style, it's just not enforced because
Mm, mm,
the authorities are a bit too lazy to
yeah.
actually put any effort into stopping it from taking place.
Except for when they want to.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
Yeah,
as soon
yeah,
as it involves their bottom line, it's a completely different
yeah,
story. But
yeah. It's like, oh,
not
whoa, whoa. We have this law, we have this rule, this decree that sits out there, and we've got to follow it this one time for sure. Yeah.
I tell you what, Ran, when we've played every team in the league and we're looking at like we'd have to do repeat episodes, maybe we could have a proper Wrexham kit episode. Go through
Ooh.
go through some corkers.
Speaking of all the English influence on some of the kits and the colors, Tranmere looks like it's mostly English players, like about as English of a team as you could get. I think I saw
Yeah,
one Irish player and one Welsh player, and now that I learned Wrexham player.
just looking at their thing on Wikipedia, it's two Irish, a Welsh, two Scottish, and the rest English. So
Okay,
that's fair. That's fairly common, I think, really for clubs at this level.
in
You
the
know, there's
EFL. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, trying to think of we've got an unusual amount of Irish players playing for us at the moment. Probably the most I've ever, well, by far the most I've ever known. I don't know. You'd have to ask Mark. He'll know some
Yeah.
season in the
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
70s where we had like, oh, well, there was actually John O'Connor and blah 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 blah. It's
Yeah.
like,
O
but
O'Connor, O'Connell,
yeah,
O'Doyle. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. But our Irish connection this year, the closest thing I can think of is really was the when we had the Trinidad connection and then we had about 3 or 4
Mm.
players from Trinidad and Tobago. That's another one of my prize shirts. Actually, I've got a Trinidad and Tobago home shirt from the year they were in the World Cup.
Oh.
That's one that is never getting prized out of my hands.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Do you have it in good condition? Is it
Yeah, ish.
good enough?
Wearable, probably not sellable.
Mm.
Someone wouldn't notice it in the street, but I think if you were trying to sell it, it's little marks and bobbles and stuff.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be fair to try and sell that at full price to somebody. But
Yeah, but that's like something that you got from that year. It's like, yeah, don't sell that. That's a
yeah,
that's
not
that's
at
one you
all.
keep and hold on to for sure.
That
But
was that was a lot of money at the time, so I had to import it, I think, from somewhere. But it's just a shame that I am now too fat to wear it. I've had it since I was like 16, 17. Doesn't quite I can get in it snug, but it doesn't quite fit me anymore. Maybe with a jacket over the top.
yeah, I put out a picture yesterday where I was wearing the current top that I even sized up from last season, and this husky boy is filling it out. The little V is spread from from a distance. Look, I talked to Che about it recently. I'm trying to get back into shape. And by trying to get back into shape, I've been talking to people that I'm trying to get into shape. I haven't done anything, but I've talked about it enough.
It's the
And
first
that's
step. It's the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
first step to failure is to talk about how you're going to fail. No, I believe in you, Ran. I believe in you.
No, life advice from Bill. You're gonna fail. Uh,
Especially if you're getting burgers chucked at you by Barrow fans.
whew,
That's, you know.
no, I know. I'm trying to, clean up the act and do good. One thing that won't happen is whenever I get to come back and visit, how do you say no to food? You don't.
No,
When you're on
on
holiday
holiday.
vacation,
Yeah.
you got to do it. So Tremere, there is a rivalry. It's not the biggest rivalry in the world. Chester, obviously, but there's still enough that it can liven up a match. There could be some heated exchanges. We've not played them too much in recent history, but do have a past with them throughout history. They're kind of similar to us on the level of competition that they've experienced in the past. They've reached the Premier League once. We've never done that. And I believe they reached it and then were relegated the next year, something like that, which seems almost too common, where we keep on hearing the story of a team making it into the Premier League and immediately gone
Coming back
the
down.
next
Yeah.
season. I guess if you don't have the fan base and the money that's coming in, staying in the Premier League is pretty hard outside of those, top 6 teams that just
Yeah.
have the money and also have the rules and laws that lets them spend more money and stay in the Premier League in perpetuity. They do have a hooligan firm that is called the Stand Boys that toured with Backstreet Boys for a season or two.
Hey.
They're doing okay this season and looks like a tasty match for us to maybe pull another 3 points, which would be good to get us on the table.
It's going to be an
Out.
early start for you guys as well, isn't it? 12:30 kickoff UK time. So whatever time, at what time will
That's
it be for you?
that's 4:30 for me a.m.
Ooh,
Yeah, which
ooh,
which means setting the alarm and having a cup of espresso or first thing just to get it started, because
yeah.
otherwise it's going to be that where I've done it before when they were those early games like 3:30 in the morning and my eyes aren't quite open, so I'm listening to the game for the first 15 minutes and I'm not actually watching because I'm trying to actually wake up. But yeah, it's going to be
Oh,
an early one.
it's tough. More than some Wrexham fans, I understand, because me and Che are big into the UFC, aren't we? So I
Yeah.
know what it's like to either try and stay up or wake up for it. And luckily there's not that many UFC main events that I feel the need to stay up for. I just record them usually. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's rough, isn't it? It's really rough. So
And,
all credit to you, Ran, if you're going to do it.
well, and our Australian friends and family, they do this all the time. 3:30,
Yeah,
4:30.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
normal. And so this game for them is going to be more reasonable hours. But yeah, I feel you on that. When I lived in Germany, following any type of U.S. sports, you had to be up early in the morning or stay up late to watch them. And each time the next day of recovery, just trying to make up for that sleep that you missed, you're always playing that catch up game afterwards. And you start to pick which ones are the matches that I'm gonna sacrifice my time for, because I
Yeah,
can't watch them all. Super
yeah,
Bowl comes
yeah,
once a year. I'll watch that, but I can't watch every single game
yeah,
that's
yeah.
gonna happen. Yeah. But yeah, anything else about Tranmere that I might have missed or
No, I think as far as I know, we've covered everything.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The statos will be in the comments telling me that I'm wrong about the level of rivalry. There'll be someone out there that absolutely hates Tranmere, but yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that's pretty much covered.
Yeah. So, somebody else, they're like, what are you talking about? One burger to the face. I had two. uh, well, yeah, and then hopefully somebody clarifies a bit about that crest, that badge, lets us know what's really going on there, what that blue smush dove is. And if it is a blue smush dove, why, why? And if you don't know why, go ahead and update your logo. Go ahead and simplify that thing. I won't be mad at you. It's in a fashion with the times. Don't worry about that. We support you. Well, Bill, thank you so much for teaching me how to Wrexham. the Bill Long way. I guess
It's
that's the
the
correct
long
form.
way.
The long way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whew, whew. Okay, I'm going to do it one more time because I love that. The long way. The long way. Okay. Why do I do this too often? Bill, thank you so much for teaching me how to Wrexham the long way.
Love it.
We could have took the
Love it.
short way, but why? We love the scenic route.
Exactly.
This has been I Still the Wrexham Comms outro. Again, this has been Bill Long, ran the long way. And until next time, up the town. Let's get those 3 on Saturday.
Come on, you Reds.
Come on, you Reds. Wait, let me get that pirate voice. Come on, you Reds. I don't know if that was good, but all right, Bill. I'll talk to
Cheers,
you, man.
man.
Yeah, cheers.